Good evening. I'd like to call our June 20th order, please, meeting. Kathy, would you mind leading us in the pledge, please?
Please, raise the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Good evening, everybody. Would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Brown?
Present.
Mayor Hogue?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McMillan?
Here.
Councilmember Randalls?
Present.
Councilmember Walsh?
Here.
We have our public participation for non-agenda items. Anybody want to speak to anything that's not on the agenda? Okay, we don't have any presentations. We do have interviews. We have two, isn't it? Okay. We have Jared Sapp. Is that correct? Sapp?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Come on up. You're applying for work.
Yes, sir.
We have our attorney over here who would like to do this a little bit.
Hey,
Sure.
good evening.
Good evening.
First question is just a matter of formality. All the information in your application is true and correct to the
Yes,
best
sir.
of your knowledge?
That's correct.
Okay, please explain to the council what you would bring to the Business and Economic Development Board if you are appointed.
Yes, thank you. So I have a pretty vast background in real estate development. I have a master's in public policy from Brown University, and I've spent the past 11 years working with Westgate Resorts as its Senior Vice President of Sales and Marketing. So I have a lot of experience in working with local municipalities, real estate deals, as well as the workings of government. So I believe pretty wide expertise that would hopefully be of value to the city.
I usually turn it over to the council members if they have any individual questions.
Start down on you, Ms. Walsh.
I actually have none. You have great background, and I appreciate you putting your name in to be considered for this board.
Thank you very much.
Just thank you for choosing our board here at the Business and Economic Development Board. That's your number one choice, and I think that's probably the wise choice. That's right where you fit.
Thank you very much. I have no question.
Thanks for applying, and I just have one or two questions, nothing serious, I don't think. Why Cape Canaveral? I mean, I know you have the thing across the street, but...
Yeah, so that's a good question. We've owned the Carver's Cove RV Park for a couple of years now. It's a place we've come to really enjoy. We just purchased as well the Wells Fargo building. So we have a pretty big interest, that being my family, not Westgate, in this community. And as I said in my initial interview, I really believe that Cape Canaveral is kind of an inflection point in terms of how it positions itself with everything that's going to come with everything that's going on with the commercial space investment. And I'd like to have at least a voice in how that's presented and what Cape Canaveral looks like for the next 10, 20 years.
I have a question there.
Yes, sir.
I see that you're not a resident of Cape Canaveral, which to me in this position really doesn't matter, but you're going to have a lot of business interests that are going to be coming up as far as the Cover and Westgate. Are you going to be able to separate what's best for your business versus the city of Cape Canaveral?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I have a lot of experience in trying to bifurcate responsibilities. As part of my job at Westgate, I manage, or part of the team that manages a homeowners association of about 500,000 people. And so oftentimes we find ourselves having to differentiate between what's best for those 500,000 families and the developer who actually built the property. So I think I have a lot of experience in separating myself from what may be in a personal best interest as well as what might be the community's best interest or the people that I'm serving. And in this capacity, I'm serving the people of Cape Canaveral, of which we've been a part of this community for a couple of years, and hope to continue to be for many more.
Thank you.
Question, Bill?
Anything in particular that you're focused on if you get on the board?
Well, obviously, my service would be at the pleasure of the board, and you know, what comes up. I do think that we have some opportunity with beautification of the corridor as it comes down, and some things that Todd and I have talked about. But I'm really in a learning phase right now. You know, I don't want to come here and say, oh, I know everything and I see everything, but I think the first step is just to kind of understand, you know, where everything sits and you know what the need is. But like I said, this is one of those inflection points. I had the opportunity to tour a number of the industrial partners that are investing in this area, mostly in the port last week, Lockheed Martin and Boeing, and we need to do everything we can to try and embrace them as part of our community and continue to you know, make sure that we are at the forefront of what happens in what's going to happen with space development in the next 20 years.
Ben?
I had just one question was already asked, and I answered it. But the only other thing I see coming up that I don't think we're quite prepared for is the onslaught of people that are going to be coming into this area. And, the matter of housing is something that I think is going to have to be taken into great consideration. And I know you're involved in that sort of thing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think housing is critical for this area. You know, particularly as we look at that corridor and what we want this community to be, there is a tremendous lack of affordable housing,
right,
you know, in this space, especially as you go further north. And if we want to continue to develop and be the city that we want, we need to address that. So I couldn't agree with that statement more.
My main concern at the moment. I do have very good interest in your resume.
Thank you.
The only thing that was concerning me is you were involved in Congress.
In Congress? Yeah.
Just don't bring that in.
It concerns me too.
No, I'm kidding aside. You're well.
If it makes you feel any better, I was there for a very short time and realized how little of an impact I could have. And hopefully somewhere like this you can have much.
I applaud. I think you'll do well. It's a good fit. I applaud Todd for finding and seeking you out. So we're going to have our thing afterwards, so you can stick around.
Absolutely.
We'll be going through it in a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. Mr. Green, did you want to?
No, we've spoken before.
Yeah. Sure you
Sorry.
have. Okay.
I won't go till I'm dismissed.
Thanks, Jared.
Okay.
Okay, we all know Don, I'm sure. We know Don.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are we doing?
I'm doing fine.
All right. Formality question, all the information in your application is true and correct to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Same question. What would you bring to the Business and Economic Development Board?
I've been in business as an entrepreneur and upper level management for over 30 years, and I'm accustomed to business development, going out and speaking to a wide variety of businesses, understanding their issues, finding solutions for them. And I think that what we are facing in the city with trying to attract new business would be exactly what I can bring to the table.
Okay. Let's just start down on this thing. Go ahead, Betty.
Start with me again.
Start with you.
Well, that was an awesome last statement. That's exactly what I could bring to the table. Thank you for applying. I know that you've been at some meetings and involved in certain things, and I appreciate you signing up for one of our boards and getting involved, because I know it's something you've wanted to do for a while. So thank you.
John, we all know you, but what kind of feedback are you getting from Puerto del Rio about the park over there? Is that a useful thing? Because
Oh, we love it.
the city's spending a lot of time,
Especially love
energy, and
that.
effort over there.
Yes, I especially love the putting green. That is probably one of my daily activities.
We can find you there if you need your edge.
Yeah, now we need a driving range, really.
Biodegradable balls.
I guess we could turn that back towards Portal Del Rio. Take your first suggestion as a potential board member, Don.
Okay, all right. I'll bring that up.
Please don't.
I'll tell them you suggested it.
Goodbye.
I just want to say, I think you'll do an excellent job, Don.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks again for coming back. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, at least we're not standing on the street waving signs.
Yeah, right?
Welcome back, Doug.
Thank you.
No sense in going through it anyway. Okay, well, we'll have that a little bit later. All right, we're gonna move on to our consent agenda. Anybody have anything of the 3 items that they want to talk about? Otherwise, we'll just move for a motion.
I make a motion to approve consent agenda items 1, 2, and 3.
Randalls would second that, Mayor.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Walsh and a second by Councilmember Reynolds. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Brown,
For the motion.
Mayor Hogue,
Four.
Mayor Pro Tem McMillan,
For the motion.
Councilmember Randalls,
4.
Councilmember Walsh.
Okay, we're moving into our public hearings, and our first item is, item number 4 is ordinance 05-2017, amending the City of Cape Canaveral comprehensive plan. And we have Councilman Hudson.
Go ahead and read the ordinance in. Ordinance number 05-2017, ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Brevard County, Florida, amending the City of Cape Canaveral Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Element by establishing a policy to authorize the City Council to issue vested rights certificates vesting residential densities for certain existing condominium, townhouse, or other multifamily development projects that exceed the current maximum residential densities established in the comprehensive plan in accordance with the terms and conditions of land development regulations to be subsequently adopted by the City Council consistent with this ordinance, providing for the repeal of prior consistent ordinances and resolutions, severability, incorporation into the comprehensive plan, and an effective date and legal status of the plan amendment. This is the second and final reading of this ordinance, also called the adoption hearing. Previously, the City Council held a public hearing for purposes of passing the ordinance on first reading and then transmitting the proposed amendment to the Department of Economic Opportunity for review and comment by the various state reviewing agencies. After the council adopted, transmitted the ordinance, the reviewing agencies provided comments back to the city. There have been no objections regarding this proposed comprehensive plan amendment. So the City Council now, pursuant to the Comprehensive Planning Act, is free to go ahead and adopt this ordinance. If the council adopts the ordinance, it will become effective 31 days after adoption per state law, unless there is a challenge to the ordinance, in which case the adoption would occur after the challenge is dispensed with. So there haven't been any changes to this ordinance since the council last reviewed it and transmitted it to Department of Economic Opportunity. As such, I'd be happy to answer any specific questions you may have still regarding this ordinance.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mayor, if I could, to the attorney, I'm sure it's in there, but it's very definitely spells out existing residential condo, townhouses, other multifamily development projects. Would that also include PUD, planned urban development, like for instance Ocean Woods?
No, the purpose of this ordinance is only related to condominiums, townhouses, and multifamily projects.
Okay, how about Sherry Down Lane? That also is one.
Is it one what?
Well, actually, that's all structural homes. It is townhouses, individually owned.
Yes, Councilmember Randalls, remember though, this deals with those that are over 15 units per acre.
Yes, understand that.
Okay.
Okay. So it doesn't include them as the answer.
Only, they are not on the list that's attached.
They are not, no.
And so that means that the staff research working with the county identified and established that they are within, there's something less than 15 units per acre, and that's why they're not on the list.
That's satisfactory with me. I supported it before, and I think it's, hello there, fella. It's a good thing, and with that clarification, then I understand it. And certainly would, if there's no other objection, I would move for approval at the second public hearing after you go to the public hearing.
Okay. Anybody else got anything they want to ask on? We're going to open it to public hearing, and we do have somebody that wants to speak. Oh, turn.
Good evening, members. I'm here, and not in necessarily a happy mood. I received a letter, as you all know from our previous appearance. We have a contract on 375 Polk, Unit 19A. I don't know if any of the other 60 properties that are at issue, plus or minus, have contracts working on them. And this is our second one. The first one got declined because the appraiser put the density issue into his appraisal, and that one went by the boards. This one is with Caliber Home Loans, and they approved the buyer, they approved the condo, thought we had done deal to close on the 9th of this month, when Fannie Mae got involved. Fannie Mae looked at the appraisal and said, no, we are not going to approve the loan until we get approval that states that your question is, if the condo gets destroyed 2 days after approval, give or take, would they be able to rebuild to full density? That's question one. Once you approve this, and I just heard it said that it goes into effect 31 days after you approve it, is that correct?
Correct. And that's pursuant to state law. We can't do
Can't do
anything about that.
one. What do I go back and tell the bank regarding this density issue, so they can tell Fannie Mae that we have a deal and we can go forward, and we're in the hurricane season. So my question is, once you approve it and something happens during the next month or two, next 31 days, can they rebuild this unit if it hasn't quite reached your 31-day period?
I don't think we can really tell you anything other than what we're doing. And my feelings are, I wish we'd have found this
So what
15
status,
years ago.
what would the status
The
be?
status here is
tonight?
tonight, if this ordinance passes,
Uh-huh.
they can rebuild that structure under certain guises of timelines.
Yeah, and that would be once that the vested rights certificate is properly issued for that property.
So not prior to the actual recording of that certificate?
I think it would be best if you seek legal opinion from your attorney, not us.
I have been going round and round.
I know, and this has been an issue, it's very complicated. We've put a tremendous amount of time, energy, and creative thinking into this. And I'm going to suggest, again, that be patient with us. We're working towards a solution. No one is any more frustrated than you and me both, and the Community Development Department. We're going to move it forward just as quickly as we can. The department will immediately begin working on the report that we have to submit to the City Council. And I would envision, we need to be able to count to 31, obviously, but we'll do what we can do to move this forward. We understand the problem.
Yeah, what's the chances, and this is just for my own benefit, of this particular unit being put to the top of your list?
It will be on the list with all of the others that will be brought forward at the same time, because there is no way that this unit can be on the top of the list, because all of the units that qualify for those under the ordinance and what we're dealing with, they'll all be brought forward at the same time. So again, I reiterate, just be patient. You're a heck of a lot closer now than you've ever been before.
Well, I know that. I don't mind coming back. So if I go back to the bank and explain to them that hopefully you will approve it tonight, we have a 31-day waiting period.
And then there's some steps that have to occur. The City Council next, as I recall, will have to approve that those properties, based upon what staff submits to the city council, that they are eligible for the vesting certificate. And then, and depending from there, the vesting certificate will be prepared, and the council, David, I think I'm correct, the council will be asked to authorize, as part of this, the signing and the approval of the vesting
What
certificate.
is the eligibility that still has to be done? Is that a study?
No, it's some questions that we have to answer per property. May I suggest that you actually come and talk to David Dickey, our Community Development Director?
With him, yes.
Yeah, well, there's no magic answer. You're not going to get the answer from the city that you're trying to pin us into. It isn't going to happen.
Okay. All right, so I will talk to Mr. Dickey and see if I can find out what the eligibility requirements might be.
We're very confident that it should meet those requirements. Like I said, the more time you consume, the longer it takes us to please you. Just remember that.
I will do so.
Because we're limited staff, we have limited time. As I said, and you can take my word for it or not, that's your decision. This is just as important, if not more so, to us as it is to you. We've put a tremendous amount of time, energy, and creative work into bringing this forward. And the more we have to, frankly, jack around, the longer it's going to take to get it done.
Thank you.
We got our biggest hurdle was the state. We went through that
Yeah.
before. Now the rest of it's gonna be easy. Let us just get our work done.
Yeah, just
We're
telling
gonna get
him
it done.
that
We'll
we
get
have
there.
a 31-day wait and see if the bank will be patient with us.
31 days and it's not our
And I'll tell him it's a state requirement.
Yeah, I mean, we're willing, and we have offered, and we have tried to send a letter to the lending institutions. Typically, they have not been willing to accept it, but we will gladly do that. That's why I want you to talk to David Dickey. Please do so.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, anybody up here have anything to add or say? Are we through with, somebody else wants to speak? You gonna speak on the next item
It's
too?
the
or-
same thing,
Yeah.
reiterating what I just did.
Or you want to speak on the next item when we get to it, or you just have item 4 on the card? is what it-
Yeah, I know that, and I didn't know if you wanted me to spend the time with you to do it
We,
again.
we already know how you feel
I know.
from the last meeting.
Same thing.
Thank you for asking, though.
Okay. Anybody up here want to foreclose on this?
Okay, Mayor,
Close it
if
up, then let's go.
I could repeat my motion to adopt ordinance number 05, 2017 at the second reading.
Okay, we have a motion by,
Just a minor point, we want to close the public hearing.
yeah, go ahead. I just want to make sure we don't have anything else. And the public hearing is closed, which, wait a minute. So Rocky, you have a motion to move 05, 2017?
Yes.
Second.
We have a motion by Mayor Emeritus Rocky Randalls, and we have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Brendan McMillan for 05, 2017. Overrule,
Councilmember Brown,
For the motion.
Mayor Hogue,
4.
Mayor Pro Tem McMillan,
For the motion.
Councilmember Randalls,
For the motion.
Councilmember Walsh.
4.
Okay, we'll move on to our ordinance 06, 2017, about the implemented comprehensive plan, future land use. Mr. Cardenese.
Ordinance number 06-2017, ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Brevard County, Florida, adopted to implement the city comprehensive future land use policy, LU 1.3.4, providing for an amendment to Chapter 115 of the City Code to establish a procedure and terms and conditions under which the City Council will determine whether to grant and issue a vested rights certificate vesting the residential densities of completed residential condominium, townhouse, or other multifamily apartment development projects existing on January 1, 2016, providing for the repeal of prior consistent ordinances and resolutions, incorporation into the code, severability, and an effective date. This is second and final reading of this ordinance, also a public hearing item. This ordinance implements the ordinance 05-2017, laying out all the procedures under which the vested right certificates would be granted to eligible residential properties. This ordinance would only become effective once ordinance 05-2017 becomes effective. And there have been no changes since first reading of this ordinance. I'd be happy to answer any remaining questions that the council members may have regarding this ordinance, and this is also a public hearing item. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, Council. We've had this before, so. Anybody have anything?
No, other than the fact that this really adds 4 items to our vested rights ordinance is what it does. Oh, 4 important items, 4 new sections, 14, 15, 16, and 17. That puts
Just trying to clean up some old messes, that's what we're doing.
Mhm.
Yeah, look at it. And it's gonna take some time. We're good. Anybody else?
The only recommendation I have, which I already spoke to staff about, but is to, we're notifying the people that have condominiums, but I think we should also notify the people that are affected by this, also the apartments and whatnot, the quote-unquote apartments. So, so everybody is fully aware of what the process is and what we're doing.
Okay, this is an ongoing thing, and it's been a mess for years. I think this will bring it to a more manageable type thing. And, I've been concerned a long time with it, and I'm glad we're doing this. So I don't have anything to really say other than I'd like to see it get done. Move for a motion.
You need to open.
Public hearing. When we got one card, that's the same lady, she says you don't want to speak, right?
No, it's still, like I said, same issue.
Anybody else care to speak before we close public hearing? Okay, we'll close public hearing. Back to the council.
If there's nobody desiring, Mayor, I would move for approval of adopting ordinance number 06-2017 at the second reading.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Randalls and a second by Brendan McMillan. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Brown?
For the motion.
Mayor Hogue?
Or,
Mayor Pro Tem McMillan?
Or
Councilmember Randalls?
For the motion.
Councilmember Walsh?
4.
okay, we'll move to item number 6. And that is an ordinance number 07-2017, and deals with the redevelopment of our building, generational building. Mr. Gargany.
Ordinance number 07-2017, ordinance of the City of Cape Canaveral, Brevard County, Florida, adopted in furtherance of the requirements set forth in section 2.12, subparagraph 5, Cape Canaveral Charter, authorizing the issuance of not exceeding $6,200,000 capital improvement revenue note, series 2017 of the city to finance the cost of multi-generational center, cultural arts preservation enrichment, Cape Center, and related capital improvements, providing for the Series 2017 note to be secured by the city's public service tax, half-cent sales tax, guaranteed entitlement, communication service tax, and certain franchise fees, authorizing the city's financing team to proceed to develop necessary documents, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, or parts of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions in conflict therewith, severability and an effective date. This is first reading of this ordinance, and would be required by city charter for the city to enter into this indebtedness obligation.
Thank you. Okay, Council, it's up to us, sir. Everybody
I
happy with it?
think it's an excellent rate that we're getting on this loan, 2.05. I think that we have to move now, go ahead and get it done before rates go up. Can't get locked in. I just appreciate the rest of the support on the council. I think we've already decided on this, that we got full council support.
I don't have any, because we'll work up this way.
Yeah, I would, Mayor, because I've given this some considerable thought. And I, along with the rest of the council, was at the March meeting when we talked, and the city manager gave us a proposal of these 5 projects. And I, along with everybody else, says that sounds good, we'll go, I'm supportive of it. Since that time, there's been some changes. You're probably aware the legislature has increased our homestead exemption, at least the eligibility of it on the ballot, for an additional $25,000. That gives me some concern a little bit on how we're going to pay for it. The city manager is very eloquently did all the homework and put it in here. I do have a question, if I may, Mr. Green, and it has probably finance director is listening. I'm in here in page 1 of your proposal. It tells very eloquently about what the payments will be for the Series 2014 note. That was for the City Hall of $612,000. It tells about the proposed note that we're talking now for $689,000 for this proposed 2017. My question is, do we have a figure yet, if I could ask it to you through Mr. Green, through the sheriff, do we have an amount that we are going to be owing for the city water waste management improvement? Is that being closed to where we know how much that is?
Rocky, remember that the wastewater and stormwater are enterprise funds.
Yeah, there's that.
And they're non-tax related in any way. And the city council, during the period that you were not on the city council, chose to increase the stormwater rate by $1 per year for X number of years to a maximum of 10. So we're moving forward with stormwater at $1 per year increase. As far as wastewater, we do have some additional needs because of the historic condition of the wastewater treatment plant and related infrastructure. What we will be working on and will be bringing to the council in the relatively near future is to recognize that our revenues are relatively flat in wastewater because of the size of the city and the growth opportunities, and we'll be asking the city council to allow us to go forward with a rate increase that would provide basically an offset on inflation and an additional increment that would allow us to proceed forward. The current approximate rate that we could get for that under SRF is approximately 1.6, 1.7% interest rate. And what we're looking at and have done calculations on clearly indicate that we could do this for a 5-year period and revisit the rate structure and whether or not it needs to be such as that. What we've projected does not take into consideration any grants or other funding sources in the wastewater side. But from a revenue point of view, we treat the wastewater and the stormwater as enterprise utilities, and for pledge purposes, they are combined operationally. So the short answer is there's a little bit more of capital that needs to be done infrastructure-wise, and then for years to come, the wastewater system should be in pretty good shape. Because remember, we've gone forward since I've been here with what I would call self-funding of renewal and replacement items, with putting a % of the revenue that we receive annually into an investment account. We do the same thing for general fund for air conditioners, vehicles, roofs, and those items that need to be replaced periodically. So those are funded. We've done the same thing for wastewater, and we've done the same thing for stormwater. So once we get the infrastructure of the city caught up to where it should have been,
It has been neglected for many years.
that we have hundreds of thousands of dollars already within the operational cash flow to proceed with a number of additional improvements. There's still things, gym sets and those kinds of things. we've been pretty successful with grants. But from my point of view, I'm very comfortable with where the city wishes to go based upon what we discussed at the retreat to move the city forward. And additionally, we all need to understand, and you alluded to it, that what we find ourselves in the situation of is we receive numerous annual unfunded mandates from our U.S. government, and they pass certain expenses and costs on to us. And one of the things we're really concerned about from a financing point of view is my understanding, and there's a lot of moving pieces these days in Washington, so one only knows at a guess what in the world's going on, or maybe the outcome, but what we're watching very carefully is whether or not municipal financings going forward will lose their tax exempt status. And so, as I said at the retreat, there's a window of opportunity that we need to be mindful of. And much the same thing with the state of Florida. Every year, this year, it was an unprecedented assault on city and county government by the Florida legislature. That is not over. That what they didn't get done this year, which they got a few things done, will come back at us again next year and for the next several years, I think without question. The current philosophy in many of the states in America, definitely in Tallahassee, is that nobody knows better than Big Brother. And even though the bulk of the infrastructure and all of the day-to-day activities that affect people's lives are funded and administered at the local level, being city or county. And you know, if they can't even pass a budget, as an example, without going to overtime, they don't really need to be telling us what to do and how to do it.
I can agree, but you see where I was heading. Some of those funds that we're counting on state revenue, even though that's kind of guaranteed, the half-cent sales tax, those can change.
Yes, but remember, those are, at this point, guaranteed entitlements. What is still hanging out there as an option, and that's particularly why I'm so darn comfortable in moving forward, is, you know, a good city manager is like a good council member. They see past, present, and future and develop certain strategies and decision-making points, and recognize that right now the city puts over $300,000, or will, in the 17-18 fiscal year budget into the CRA. The county puts about $400,000 during that same period. Staff has taken the lead, if you will, in communicating with county commissioners, and it's our understanding that the county is perhaps softening somewhat on CRAs, at least temporarily. There are two that are very pro-CRAs. Chairman Smith is sort of on the bubble, but our understanding, and by the way, staff has been trying to set a meeting with him and has yet to be successful, unless there's something I'm not aware of at this moment. But where we find ourselves there is we have several $100,000 in both the Cape project and the multi-generational facility project are CRA eligible, and if you look at our CIP, you'll see that it's been carried that way in the CIP as general government funds as well as CRA funds. See, that's what I get paid for.
Well, now, I have to say, I did not know that. Was a lot I don't know, of course.
Yeah.
But,
Well, come by and see me. I'm almost always there.
I'm on a roof painting.
Ooh, don't ask me to do that. But anyway, I think, so what we're saying is there's a high level of confidence that we can do this. And don't forget, even with ultimately, and this is tied up, frankly, with the need to keep up with inflation, the city still has a lower taxable value as a municipality than it had pre-recession. We are still not yet up to where we were back in 6 and 7 and 5 time period. So that's been a considerable handicap for staff. At the same time, overall, the cost of living and expenses of other goods and services are escalate, so we cannot tie in any way, shape, or form the recommended tax increase by $500,000 to totally to just these two projects. What's the reality is unfunded mandates continue to limit our abilities to do our jobs properly locally, and they pass on additional expenses. And with the level of service that this community seems to request and demand, that's how we meet those needs, by being as efficient as we can. And you know, I get criticized all the time, sometimes people that sit at this table. But if you look at the numbers of city employees with all the additional service level increases that we've had versus the number of employees, I believe we have actually less overall city employees now than you had when I came here, just by way of information. And the tax rate, we are still the third lowest tax rate city in Brevard County, and if the council does go forward with a tax increase ultimately, that will still be the case. And so again, we can kind of shout wolf and find playfully bazillions of reasons not to do something. But the reality is that you're going to, if you go forward, get a great interest rate. If you go forward with a little bit more of SRF, you'll be lower than what the inflationary targets are set by the federal government, the Federal Reserve, and why they continue to increase our rates. And as you know, I think they just made their fourth adjustment to the Fed funds rate, I believe, if I'm counting correctly, and God only knows, but in that range. And there's a few more coming by the way. So construction costs continue to go up, and just as I said back in March or so, there are windows of opportunity that we must be mindful of. And we still have a lot of uncertainty on insurance costs and those kinds of things, but we're dealing with everything we can control reasonably aggressively. And that was also why I committed to the city council at the retreat and at subsequent meetings that I'll be glad to be your city manager for the next several years without a salary increase for me. So I view that as the Green family's contribution to these capital projects for this community.
That's putting your money where our mouth is.
I do believe so, yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Green. I've probably did more research on this than I really needed to, but I really wasn't comfortable for sure that I could, because when I say yes, there's people says, you did that? And that's true of all of us up here. I'm no different than anybody else. Thank you for that. And I did
You
this a
have to
whole
ask
year.
yourself, Rocky,
That made a big difference.
when they ask you that, you ask them if that's what they wanted. You know, were they at the visioning session? Were they wanting the quality of life that we have in this city today that we didn't have 10, 12 years ago? Do they want the taxes to stay low? Taxes stay low by letting good businesses come in here, which they didn't want to do 15, 20 years ago. If you all remember, as you know, you've been here.
Yeah.
So the quality of life that we demand, or people are demanding, you can't do it on a nickel. It has to be 7 cents today, and maybe tomorrow or next year it'll be a dime. So, and if you look back at our tax rate, we are the third lowest in the county, Valkyria and Grant below us. And I think the other one's Indian Harbor Beach, if I remember
All
correctly.
shores, maybe.
But, well, they don't even have an avalon, so they're the lowest in the whole world, I think. They don't have an avalon. But you gotta look back at the history of the city. What David was referring to in 2006, our tax rate was 3.9 at that time, I believe. And we dropped it back, went back to rollback 2 times in a row. Then we went below rollback 2 years in a row. And we did all that and that lowest tax base. And now we're looking and taking the wishes of the community, what they want. And we gotta bump it just less than what we were back 4 years ago. We're still less.
And I know I get accused of talking too much, and sometimes I do, but I would like to think that it answers questions before they're asked sometimes. And so that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. But when we look at where we are, the current loan with Hancock Bank does expire, or is fully paid off in 23-24. So that provides the city council an option to reduce the tax rate if it wants to, not later than then. The other possibility, again, as the CRA increases and we do what hopefully the council will agree with, is setting up a loan back and forth between the CRA and the general fund. As the CRA continues to grow, we'll weight that such that the CRA will pick up a larger portion legitimately of those costs that can be properly attributed to the CRA. So I always like to have several options because you never know what's going to happen for sure. But I think when we look at all the pieces, there are opportunities here. I think we're being relatively conservative, even though others can certainly disagree with that. Properly so, I might add, in my judgment. It's just if we want the assets in the community, there's probably not going to be a much better time. And I'm not trying to say now or never, because I wouldn't do that to you all. I would just say that this is a very opportune time period. 6 months ago, the 10-year federal funds rate, federal treasury was right around the high 2.4 to 2.5% interest. There was a pretty considerable bump that occurred with the election of President Trump, ultimately. They are now back down into around the 2.2 range, give or take a little bit. And what we've worked out with Hancock Bank is at least a 15 basis points rate less, and the overall issuance cost and the requirements are very reasonable. Often in a financing, you have to pay for a call provision and are somewhat penalized by calling. And the way we've set those up here is on these two that we can call and start prepaying early, advance pay. All of those options are available to you. And with, I understand the long-term controversy in Florida and other places, anti-CRA, but remember when we established the CRA in 2012, that was the absolute low point in property values.
That is true.
And so we took advantage of that also, intentionally. We guessed right, frankly. Sometimes it's better to be lucky. But having said all that, we'll be getting upwards of several $1 million from the county government, ultimately, that the city has historically not had the benefit of. One of the things I heard loud and clear when I came here was the beaches in general, Cape Canaveral is a donor community to the county. And so we found a mechanism legally called the CRA to help receive funding from the county within the CRA area, which is roughly 57% or so of the city of Cape Canaveral, primarily including the presidential streets areas and some of the areas that we have challenges. The redevelopment ordinance that we just did, and Councilman McMillan is at, Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry, technically very correct. We will be sending a letter to all of the multifamily properties in the city, making them aware of the possibility, if they should choose to retain their density, that they could enter into a development agreement with the city to maintain that density and redevelop the properties. And I think I shouldn't have to say to anyone some of the properties we have our eyes on. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. It just means the ordinance that you just approved, or ordinances, allow that possibility during certain time constraint periods.
Well, you're batting about 1,000 on that, and I haven't heard any opposition at all. I live on the streets. So, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Mayor, go ahead.
Betty, you have anything you want to add?
Nope. I'm sorry if you're looking at Betty, I'll get back.
I'm good. I said a lot about this at the last month's meeting.
You
so
good with it?
I'm good.
Mike?
I think it's an important project and the city needs to move forward.
I love the rate. I don't think we're going to get much better. As we discussed, it's just going to go up.
Yeah.
I'm pretty much, right now, unless I hear more arguments, at my comfort level for debt with the city at this point. I think it's a very comfortable level. I tend to be pretty conservative in that respect, but it's nice that we've had the room to do that with going the rollback and everything. We've got some good projects on the horizon. One of the things that we're going to have to address as the council here pretty soon is we still have more projects on the list that we want to do. So we have to, I think, at the next visioning thing, figure out how we're going to do that with the whole money process. And yeah, things can change. I mean, heck, I could drop dead tomorrow, but it's not going to stop me from investing in myself. I think that's what we're doing with this money, is investing back in our community to make it a nicer and better place to live for us. And people notice. A lot of people have come to me and said, hey, Cape Canaveral is really doing some really cool stuff. And they notice, and businesses notice that, and then they want to come here as well. And people notice that, and they go, well, this is a great place to live. I'll look at that. So I think this is a great thing. And also, I think in 5 years or so, as we discussed, we could look at either reinvesting that money that we have, maybe potentially staying at our comfort level, or at least my comfort level, or cutting taxes again, and everybody looks like a winner. So, but sometimes you just gotta suck it up and do the scary thing and spend some money.
I don't have much more to say than what I said already. I think we're listening to the citizens. Some citizens probably don't want to hear what we're listening to. But we're listening to what the visioning of this city was 10 years ago. But we're going to follow it as long as I'm here and I get to put my 2 cents worth in. Because I sat through the 10 months of visioning sessions and listened to the people. In fact, I was telling Mr. Green, or no, I was telling Todd the other day that I found my old notes from the visioning in my file of the visioning sessions, all the votes that were taken, and I was really surprised at some of the things that we've accomplished. We're on the top priority votes. So we're moving in that direction, and we're going to keep moving in that direction. Hopefully, and yeah, it might take a little tax increase, but you look at a $500,000 tax, we're not even at the base of the tax of what we were 10 years ago. We're still way below it by 0.4 of a million. So we have a lot of room to play with yet to even get to where we were 10 years ago with taxes. We weren't even doing what we're doing today. And I attribute a lot of it to this gentleman and staff. So we're moving. We're doing great. I'm going to support it 100%. I have said what I want to say about the taxes, millage, and all that. And I will now move on bias to the public discussion. We have one gentleman, Bill Fish.
I am right here.
Up to the mic, sir. Give us your name and ladies' name and information.
My name is Bill Fish. I'm a resident of Harbor Oaks. I've lived in the area since 1982. Owned property in Cocoa Beach, and then bought in Shorewood, and then sold Shorewood and left for a while, and came back and bought in Harbor Oaks. I'm going to speak from the standpoint of the taxpayer, okay? That's where I'm at. I had a friend of mine send me this a day ago, and I looked at it. And then I sort of poked around with some people I know, and I find out that Canaveral was on the hook for $8 million in North Atlantic, had $8 million for a city, and then spent $5.5 million on a loan for the
Sir, could you pull the microphone to you a little bit? Once in a while we can hear you.
Okay,
Yes.
so $8 million North Atlantic, $5.5 million, now 6.2 for this. As a taxpayer, I sort of become concerned about that. And when I look at the global economy, you know, a little more concerned, you know. 46% of people own houses. Less than 50% of the people invest in the stock market. 35% of the people live day to day, live week to week. They can't afford anything, okay? If you listen to AARP, they'll tell you that in Florida, we should get this right, that people over 60 provide 61% of the state's income, okay, and represent 22% of the populace. That means that 78% of the people who live here provide 39% of the income. So my question is, how are you going to pay for this stuff? Okay, If you're on the hook for these taxes, you're gonna just 0.5% or whatever it is, how is it gonna be funded, okay? I'm in, because I'm my age, I'm in over 60, okay? When I'm gone, who pays? I don't wanna tell you guys how to do your job. I'm sure everybody, it's a lot of sacrifice, a lot of time, I understand that kind of thing, but I keep coming back to the fact you gotta pay for this. You don't have a balanced budget, you're screwed, okay? That's where I'm at. That's all I have to say. I'm arrived as a day and a half ago, okay? But I know one thing. I don't attend these meetings, I'm gonna attend them. And when the vote comes around next year, I'm gonna have something to say about it, because I don't wanna be on the hook for something that's a nice to have if nobody can afford it. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? We'll close public hearing. Get it back to the council. Anybody want to make a motion or got some other things we want to talk?
I make a motion that we accept ordinance 07-2017 as written.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Brown and a second by Mr. McDonald. Pass ordinance 07-2017. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Brown?
For the motion.
Mayor Hogue?
Four.
Mayor Pro Tem McMillan?
Four.
Councilmember Randalls?
I cannot support it, no.
Councilmember Walsh?
Or,
Okay. Motion passes 4-1. Randall's and that. Okay, we'll move on to ordinance number 08-2017, amended chapter 98 of the City of Cape Canaveral Land Use Development Code. Mr. Darganese, this is first reading, sir.
Ordinance number 08-2017, ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Brevard County, Florida, amending chapter 98 of the Cape Canaveral Land Development Code relating to submittal, review procedures, and criteria for preliminary plats, final plats, and lot splits, creating a procedure for lot line adjustments, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, incorporation into the code, severability, and an effective date. This is first reading of this ordinance, also a public hearing item, so this is the first time council gets an opportunity to take a look at this ordinance. This proposed ordinance was recommended by the Planning and Zoning Board and recommended by staff. This ordinance basically looks under the hood of the subdivision or division of land process that the city has on the books in the city code. This ordinance attempts to streamline the division of land process. Also, this ordinance proposes to augment the division of land process by incorporating previous administrative procedures that we have utilized in the past regarding divisions of land, which I'll get into a little bit more. In addition, this ordinance establishes some additional criteria for the Planning and Zoning Board staff and the City Council to consider when making these decisions without incorporation of this additional criteria. As the council is aware, that criteria would not be relevant for purposes of decision making because the division of land procedures are quasi-judicial in nature. So improving upon and expanding the review criteria helps with the decision-making process in general. So going through the proposed changes, basically in general categories. First and foremost, Chapter 98 regulates the subdivision or division of land in the city. And the first change that's relevant to keep in mind is the definition of subdivision is being proposed to be changed to be a division of a tract of land in 3 or more lots or parcels, etc. That change is being made because of the lot split, which is a division of one lot into two. Therefore, by changing this to three, we're providing a limited exception to the subdivision of land procedures, AKA platting procedures. So that's a technical amendment that would let the rest of this ordinance work properly. Currently, under the subdivision of land chapter, an applicant can request a variance from the technical terms of the subdivision requirements by submitting an application. Interestingly, however, the variance application, the final decision-making under the current code, belongs to the Board of Adjustment after a recommendation is received from the Planning and Zoning Board. We believe that having the Board of Adjustment approve a variance to the subdivision requirements does not make sense because the City Council ultimately has the final say on the subdivision, aka plat. So to allow the Board of Adjustment to grant a variance to the platting requirements on something that ultimately has to go to the council for final approval didn't quite make sense to us. So to streamline the process, rather than the Board of Adjustment considering variances, the City Council would ultimately make those final decisions under this ordinance when it considers the final approval of a preliminary plat or final plat. So that's a streamlined change. Then moving on to the ordinance, as I mentioned, improving the criteria, beginning on page 6 of 14, you can see that the additional review criteria is being proposed. So when there is a preliminary plat and final plat, the council can consider such relevant information pertaining to compatibility with the surrounding area and look at other issues like orderly layout of the land, congestion on streets and highways that may be caused by subdivisions of land, adequate air and light, in addition to criteria such as whether or not the plat would cause an overcrowding of land, and whether the preliminary plat and final plat would cause any harm to the economical provisions of the water, sewer, and other public service provisions in the code. So again, that criteria would help improve the decision-making process. Then moving on to page 8 of 14, the other general area that this ordinance addresses is the lot split requirement. As you know, the current city code allows for lot splits. This language kind of clarifies certain provisions in the lot split code. In addition, it augments the application process to those items that we have administratively have required lot split applicants to submit. By incorporating it into the code, it provides more clarity to the applicant up front and to staff in processing these applications. And in addition, we're incorporating additional review criteria similar to what I mentioned for preliminary plats. That criteria would be considered for lot splits as well. And the last change to the ordinance is to add a division 6 for lot line adjustments, which commences on page 11 of the proposed ordinance. Suffice to say, and just to be brief on lot line adjustments, all the council members should remember the lot line adjustment that was approved by the council for the Lagos and Barger lot split. That we have basically memorialized, or proposing to memorialize in the code, that process, so it's clear going forward how that could occur in the future and what property owners would be required to submit to the city, and what the decision-making process would entail. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions you may have regarding the ordinance. And I wasn't sure if planning staff was going to make a presentation. I'm seeing a no.
I have a question.
So if you have any technical questions before you open it up to the public, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well aware of what we've done with it. Anybody down? Betty, you have anything?
No, I actually discussed this pretty thoroughly with David Dickey and David Green. So I now believe I have an understanding of it.
Rather convoluted, something like that.
I understand the purpose.
Okay, Mike? you all right
No
with it?
questions.
Okay, we'll open it up to the floor again. Come on up, sir.
I just have a quickie. I just don't understand it, that's all, because at the time I lived in Shorewood, we had a rainstorm over there would choke a horse. We had water up to the front doors, not only Shorewood, Solana Lakes, Cape Canaveral, I think it was Ron John. And when push came to shove, found out that there were no storm sewers over there. And there were no storm sewers because the county waived the requirement. You're telling me the city has that, has that authority. I can explain that.
No, I'm
Are
not
you
sure.
referring to Tropical Storm Faye when that came through?
No, I don't know when it was. It would have been 2005, 6, 7, somewhere around. It just stopped and it just rained and rained.
That was a
and
port
rained
issue.
and rained and-
We had a big, I
Yeah.
believe, if I'm not mistaken, the port had some issues with some storm drain and
There's no storm sewers in Shorewood, Solana.
So they're all on the storm system.
They're all retention
They're all
ponds.
retention areas, but
Yeah,
there was
nothing.
some problem. It wasn't the city's problem. It related.
No storm sewer, period.
I understand it, sir. I'm trying to tell you that. But it was a problem that created from the north to the south. It was the port, one of their major storm systems collapsed. We took all their water out of it.
And that
That's
is
some
since,
understanding.
that has since been corrected.
There are
The
storm sewers.
necessary work to solve the problem so that it should not occur again.
Is that pertinent to this issue?
Not in the least.
No,
Okay, I was
it's not
trying to make the connection.
This involves the division of land.
Okay, we're talking about lot splits and
Correct.
splitting parts of the property and adjusting lines that
Okay.
have been out of kilter for years around here. Like I say, we're cleaning up some old stuff, we're getting it. But, anybody else? Council, back to us, close public hearing.
It's back to us.
It's back to us, sir, yes, sir.
I understand it and approve the ordinance and would move for approval of ordinance number 082017 at the
Second.
first hearing.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Randalls and a second by Mr. McMillan for ordinance number 082017. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Brown?
For the motion.
Mayor Hogue?
Or,
Mayor Pro Tem McMillan?
For the motion.
Councilmember Randalls?
For the motion.
Councilmember Walsh?
4.
okay, we're gonna move on to item number 8, and that's ordinance number 092017, and this is dealing with being able to put fences closer to property lines, just put it in a nutshell for everybody who don't know what the ordinance is saying. Mr. Attorney, please.
Ordinance number 09-2017, ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Brevard County, Florida, amending section 110-470 of the Cape Canaveral Land Development Code to allow fences and walls 6 feet in height or less to be located within 15 feet of the public right-of-way on a non-conforming corner lot of record, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, incorporation into the code, severability, and effective date. This is first reading of this ordinance. This ordinance has also been recommended by staff and the Planning and Zoning Board. This ordinance makes a technical amendment on page 2 of the ordinance regarding the location of fences and walls on non-conforming corner lots of record. Technical. If you have any answer any questions you may have, should have placed the diagram in the agenda because that's worth a million words. But when you see it up there on the screen, at least as we did in the Planning and Zoning Board, it made a lot of sense.
We have one for second reading.
Good.
I don't think it'll hinder my thinking, but I know a lot of people that are really thankful that this has happened.
Yeah.
So, but it wouldn't hurt for maybe public to have maybe next time date. Okay, Councilman?
I'm just glad we're cleaning up the code. I know it's a lot of tedious reading and redoing and reviewing, but as the city grows, I mean, stuff changes obviously, and this is one of the things that I've been trying to get to, so.
I agree.
South end of the diet. Becky, you all right with it?
No, I'm good. We've been cleaning up code now for about 8 or 9 years. We're still at it.
We'll probably be cleaning them up for another 90 years.
I think I can feel really comfortable in saying, yes, you will.
Okay, we'll go to public hearing. Does anybody want to talk about this? Any questions? We'll close public hearing. Back to us.
Move to approve ordinance number 9-2 for 2017 as written.
My second?
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. McMillan, Mayor Pro Tem McMillan, and we have a second by Councilmember Walsh. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Brown?
For the motion.
Mayor Hogue?
Or,
Mayor Pro Tem McMillan?
Four.
Councilmember Randalls?
For the motion.
Councilmember Walsh?
4.
okay, we're going to move on to item number 9, and this is ratifying the composite city manager performance evaluation. So I think y'all have all this information in your packet.
This is the League of Cities next.
Yep.
Number 10. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, the agenda items that actually says 9, and that's the city council FLC delegate.
Looking at, I guess.
On the agenda, it says
I got it.
9, but as you go through the packet, it goes down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Whatever.
Okay.
I'm
You
good
want
with
to, we do
whatever.
that last or what?
All right.
I don't
Save the
know.
best for last.
On the agenda, it's the ratification of the city manager performance. So,
In the council packet, it's the other way
Yeah,
around.
the other way around.
This council, item number 9 is the designation for a vote delegate.
Let's just do item
As long as you
number
don't
9
send me
item
away.
number 9 in the packet, then we'll work on Mr. Green later.
Did you say we're going to number 9?
We're gonna do 9, the delegate for the League of Cities. It's number 9, but on the agenda it shows 10. I've got it up there.
I'm going to excuse myself because I don't want to.
You mean you,
No, I don't want to. Just let me know.
Better not leave then.
No, I'm not. I'll
you better not leave, you know, it could be a railroad job.
I know, that's why I want to get volunteers.
I guess my question, Mayor, has any of our council members decided they wish to attend? Because that's the number 1 clause. Are they going to be there?
Right, well, let's ask Mr. Brown, and he's the
Well,
one that.
I went last year. I'd like to go ahead and pass the opportunity on to somebody else.
You didn't enjoy it?
Yeah, it was a good time, but the
Okay.
time might not be right for me.
Rocky?
No, I'm not in attendance. I can't get there. Mayor, you are on one of the boards. Are you available?
Yeah, and I've done what Mike done for 10 years, so, but I'll, you know, Brendan didn't want to do it, right, did he say?
Well, he didn't sound too, it was way too.
Yeah, my understanding is he's got to have a very heavy work schedule and some other things going on, and that he just would prefer not to.
Mayor, do
be
you-
committed to that.
I'm gonna be there anyway, so.
Well,
Why don't you do it? then?
Well, it simply means that if we have an item on the legislation, that you would be there to.
Right, I know what it means. No, 10 years.
Yeah.
I've done it for a few years. Mike did it. You've done it yourself, Rocky, for a couple of years, so I think we all know what it is. But if you're going to be
I'm
attending
there
the
anyway,
conference
but I didn't
anyway, why don't
wanna-
you do it if you don't
Like,
mind?
like when I bowed out, didn't bow out because I wanted to, but I'd like other people to partake in more.
We've all been at the table, Mayor.
We got a second on that, Brendan? Motion? Okay, everybody, we didn't tell them around till you got back.
I appreciate that, thanks.
We want you to be involved in this. How deeply involved you want to get, we want to know.
Did anybody express any interest?
Just the mayor.
Oh, really? She said that.
We were talking about having him done it before, and Mayor Hogue is going to actually be there because he's on a couple of other boards, and he'll also be doing some stuff as the mayor. So we were discussing that since he'll be there, he may want to be our voting representative too.
I will do it if nobody really wants to partake in
I know you're involved with it, Mike. I can't be there after work.
it.
You want to do it?
Well, if the mayor can't do it, then
Well, I'm gonna be there. I'll be there anyway, but I'm just saying, I'll do it if nobody wants to do it. I know it is not the most lucrative thing in the world to do.
Right.
I would have no problem doing it, but I'm not going to be able to be there for all of the days. So I'd rather not commit myself and then have to get somebody to fill in for me.
That's the same issue I have.
Good. Then I will do it. I'll do it. I just don't want to take it away from somebody who wants to do it.
You're not taking it away.
Because I want to see you all get involved in the policy committees. That's very important and serious, right?
Okay.
The rest of it's fun and games.
Drinking party and the rest of the
I
time?
feel that. Okay, let's just do a motion then.
I move that the mayor represent us at the Florida League of Cities vote as our voting delegate at the 91st Annual Florida League of Cities Conference.
I second.
Thank you.
Yeah, duly accepted. Okay. We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Brendan McMillan and a second by Councilmember Walsh. Call the roll.
Councilmember Brown?
For the motion.
Mayor Hope?
Fourth.
Mayor Pro Tem McMillan?
Four.
Councilmember Randalls?
For the motion. Go, Mayor.
Councilmember Walsh?
Over.
Okay. I'll make sure I get all the chocolate ice cream I can get to. Let's see, we're going to move on to item number 10, which is item number 9 on your agenda. No, our city manager's composite performance evaluation. I will open it up to the council. Our yearly thing is to do this every year, evaluation. And he has a contract with the city for X amount of time and dollars. And you have to make a decision what you want to do. Anybody interested in, or have you come up with any ideas? Or what your thoughts are?
I spoke with the city manager about this, obviously we all have. And I'm going to take him at his word that he's not interested, he's making enough money, so. But one thing I don't want to do is give him a pay cut, and consumer price index went up, and inflation went up 2.1% this year. So I'd move at least to, well, I'm not going to move yet, but I would recommend that we at least do a 2.1% increase to his base pay. And anything beyond that, if there is anything beyond that, against his wishes, but I would say we could allow him to do with what he chooses, either give it to staff, which we had discussed, or disperse it among staff, or contribute it to a charity, anything beyond the 2.1%. But I would move, if you want a starting point, to have at least a 2.1% pay raise to keep up with inflation, and then we can get that part out of the way. But that would be my recommendation at this point. Of course, more discussion. I'd like to hear from you guys.
Sounds like you had just about the same conversation I had with David Green. Except he didn't even want the 2.1%. But he did express that if we wanted to do something and allow him to, whatever the increase was that we thought might be good, that he could take those proceeds and either do the charitable contribution or potentially do something for the team that works for him, to acknowledge that, which is a true leader trait right there.
I had a real heartfelt talk with David over this because I'm a strong believer in pay paying people, my people are paid very well. Probably one or two high on cost, everybody says. But I pay my people, and I believe in paying people. And, I had a good long talk, this majorly is what I talked to David about. The rest of the agenda was kind of just put to the side. I know what David said before, and he mentioned it again tonight, that he did not want a pay raise. He's happy right where he's at. I tell you, I don't know anybody that would want to work and not be paid, or get a raise every, whatever their time periods are, but I told David that I was going to propose that we give him $5,000 bonus, and he can in turn around and give that to his employees and split it across the board. So our employees, this is exactly what he told me and what we decided, if the dais so desires to go along with David on this. He wants to give his bonus to his employees. And I asked him, I said, what is it? Directors, X amount of dollars? No, we'll just do it across the board. Everybody gets $100 from your boss. I think that was more than anybody could even think of. So, of somebody thinking about doing that. So that kind of tells me that he is a good guy, and you guys are the guys that make him good, and he is paying you back.
Whoa, you went too far on that.
Well, this is what it amounts to. You're showing your appreciation to people that are working for you, and I think it's unheard of. I've never heard of this before, but I told him, I said, David, I'll put it on the diets. So if you all want to do that, and I would like to, on top of that, give him this 2.5%. As long as everything else. That is a lot less than what his normal salary increase should be. We're looking at less than $8,000 between the two. If you want to give him this 2.5%. If he'll take it, that's up to him. But I'll go along with that too. But I think that his wishes were to take a $5,000 bonus and give it back to his employees. I'll live with that for sure. And if he wants to accept the 2.5%, I'll go along with that too, because I think he well deserved it. Last year we gave him 10 grand, so we're way below what we gave him. It's up to us.
Is there a motion on the floor for the 2.5%?
No.
Did you?
No.
I don't think that's what I think we're still
He was-
discussing. but
He was saying he would do it.
That's much more, mine was a recommendation, at least keep up with inflation, and then beyond that,
Okay, so there is no motion.
there is no motion that I'm aware of.
Nobody made a motion. We had the idea of a 2.5% salary.
I'd move for a 2.1% increase to keep up with an inflation with the $4,000 bonus to, you can do with what he
It was
pleases.
five.
Or five, okay, $5,000 bonus, do with what he pleases.
I second.
Any discussion? Rocky, you?
No, other discussions, probably the audience is wondering what we're doing. The city manager had come to us during the retreat and said that he really wanted to stay and wanted to work for us for the city, but did not want any more increase in salary. Kind of a bold statement that nobody ever makes for their bosses. And that's why we're kind of relinquishing as to how to gracefully go about that. He believes, the words here, that he committed to remain at the city for 5 more years if he could, with no salary increases. That's a gracious move, probably something very few of us would ever do. We certainly don't wish to offend him, but we wish to. I certainly would support it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I agree that it's very gracious, and I just spoke to John about money for the employees, and to have the boss throw back his salary or bonus to them is admirable. I just want to thank Mr. Green for even, hopefully he'll accept.
Okay. You second
If you,
the motion?
Patty did, I believe she was in
Yep.
there.
Okay. Okay, any further discussion? Anybody would like to say anything? Floor is open to the public.
I wonder if I could get Mr. Green to come work for me.
No.
Yeah, we'll finally get for that one, bud. Okay, we'll close public. Bring it back to us. We're gonna have a motion by Brendan and seconded by Betty for Mr. Green's evaluation. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Brown?
For the motion.
Mayor Hogue?
Four.
Mayor Pro Tem McMillan?
For.
Councilmember Randalls?
For the motion.
Councilmember Walsh?
For.
But I might add to the public that doesn't have access to Mr. Green got a very good evaluation. So it wasn't just a whim to throw $5,000 at him. He deserved it. The evaluation shows he deserved a lot more than $5,000. Look, does anybody have anything they want to say before we close? Meeting adjourned.